Hi everyone, welcome to another ecosystem innovation video. We're going to talk a little bit about data migration today because it's a massive topic, and especially when it comes to ERP. By 2027, for example, everyone will have to have migrated from SAP ECC to S4. Naturally, there are other big ERP companies pushing everyone to the cloud. So, but what does that mean in relation to the data that you have in your existing systems? Because there's a huge amount of legacy data. And legacy really does mean legacy. It's pretty much the backbone of what your business has been doing over the last however many years. It's been there for a long time. But normally it's not been managed super effectively, and it requires management. It's the gold of the company, but because it contains all of the history in terms of the way that that business operated. There is, however, a misconception that IT has to be the owner of this challenge. ERP migrations are usually really, really big programs that have multiple strands. And IT is trying to manage all that and pull that through. But in today's world, there are some excellent solutions, especially as it relates to procurement, to allow that data migration to occur with efficiency, with quality, and most importantly, opening up the data that's been available to be used intelligently for the future of the business. And it's not reliant on leveraging the busy IT teams who are looking at the ERP program and, it's just one other thing that they've got to think about. And it's usually, especially when it comes to procurement, because we get impacted by it quite heavily, the area that it feels like a missed opportunity, but that's because, hey, I'm a small piece in a very big cog. Since moving to Tealbook, I've had the pleasure of talking to a number of different companies who manage data in extremely creative ways. And that's kind of pun intended, because I want to introduce you to Adriano Garibotto, who is the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer at Creactives. They're in the Spend Matters 50 to Know, ProcureTech 100, and in the Kearney Spidergram. They manage the improvement in efficiency and accuracy of inventory data, which is a massive thing, of course, for businesses. And that all depends on the quality of material and services master data. So let's talk to Adriano and really get an understanding of what they do, as well as talking about the topic in general, because the Creactives team have a huge amount of knowledge and history there. So welcome, Adriano. Thank you for being on this video today. And I'm really looking forward to speaking to you about this topic.
Thank you, Mo, for having me. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience.
No problem at all. We've had some interesting conversations over the last couple of months. Why don't you give us a little bit of an overview of what Creactives does? And I know you do a number of different things, but just so that the audience understands how you connect into this topic in general.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the problem of the data is a huge problem, especially with migration, because specifically SAP is recommending to all the companies to make a sort of cleansing and enrichment of the data before the migration. And so, but even if you want to implement other systems like a source-to-pay platform, et cetera, you need to avoid a very old way of saying the IT space, so garbage in, garbage out. So it's not depend on the platform you use, it depends on the quality of the data you use to get the final result you want.
Yeah.
And specifically, there is an area that has been a little bit neglected over the time because it was too complex. And it is about materials. So materials, specifically MROs, etc., is an incredible complexity, because you're speaking about thousands of different technology categories, etc. So definition of quality in this environment is not that easy. So it requires a lot of knowledge and specific knowledge, because the definition of a valve is quite different from a definition of a pump or a hose or a connector. So when you want to optimize the data, when you want to cleanse data, enrich the data, is crucial to know what is the real information you need to enrich in order to make possible that the migration is safe, or the installation, or the new information to the source to pay platform you may want to implement is the right one to have. And when I say right one,
sorry, I was going to ask you. I mean, one of the other challenges with that, it isn't just because, especially in a multinational company where you have, you know, data in different languages, different geographies, the supply base is different, and that's something that we're talking about in terms of our relationship. That's something that you guys do as well, that's been built as part of the solution, correct?
Absolutely. And thank you to mention that, because when we speak about complex companies, is exactly the thing you said. So you have legacy data written in local languages and not really natural language, I mean, because you know, the whole problem of the short description, long description inside of this kind of information. And this is a kind of information that is in multiple language, but also require a knowledge in the mind of the reader to be properly understood. So the challenge is when you have to deal, for example, in a company like AB InBev, with a couple of million of metadata coming from 11 different systems around the world in more than 12 languages, with some Chinese or Korean data, etc. Well, the challenge is hard, because you need to have something that is possible to put in place that automatically understand Chinese, English, Turkish, or whatever, and say, oh, well, these materials are equal because are described in different way, but are really the same. So this is a big challenge that at the end of the day has also big money impact, because we are not speaking about only data. We are speaking about working capital that is reflected by the data. So when you create a master data, material master data, what you are really doing is to have a stock keeping unit somewhere with a quantity of money that you have spent to have this item there. So if you have duplicate items, you have duplicates unnecessary working capital from them there.
Sure. So, but you also, so that's the piece around analyzing the data, understanding what each line item means at a granular level. But then you also, once you've deduplicated it and in effect remove the real garbage, if you want to call it that, you also then add information to the data to help, once that data push were to go back into, let's say it's a migration from ECC to S4, that it's adding additional information, not only cleaning it, but it's enriching it.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that most of the information that you can find in the legacy system is unstructured. So unstructured means that a human being can understand, but is not from the IT perspective and is really usable, okay? And so enriching in terms of technology would be how to exploit all the information that is unstructured and transform in a structured information that can be really exploited. And as the human being, some part of the information can be not even explicitly written there, but can be deducted. So it's like when you go to a warehouse and you speak with a very smart guy. So you say, okay, I want a valve. So a valve, you have a dozen of valves. So the guy will speak, so is it a liquid valve or is it a pneumatic valve? And you say, no, it's a pneumatic valve. And then you put another, oh, well, and the diameter of the enter of the fluid, what it is. So, you know, there's a lot of information that has to be explicit and normalized in order to identify an item that to make possible any kind of transaction. You buy it, you take from the warehouse, you put in as a replacement part, etc., etc. This completeness of the information is crucial, and the artificial intelligence comes to the stage trying to capture all the available information, structured or non-structured, and or deductible, and then by normalize them using as a searching capability, definition capability, identification capabilities.
Okay, and you talked about AI and machine learning there. So how does it do that at a high level? What is it that you focus on? Because obviously, taking unstructured data means that you've got to structure it back into a much more quality of data. So and that's done through the engine. So can you talk a little bit around that?
Yeah. And I want to speak about another misconception here. So there is a lot of misconception regarding the fact that you need to have good data before starting anything. But you cannot have good data because the data has been created with the traditional tools. Right. And if you remain there, you will produce another bad data over the time. So you need to deal with the data you have. So one very innovative approach to this in the AI space is that we have developed an approach to the data that deal with the fact that big part, we don't know at the beginning of any project, but a part of the data is bad.
Yeah.
How you can train an artificial intelligence knowing that a part of the data is bad. So this has not to be a limit in this process. And the approach we have developed is exactly the possibility for an artificial intelligence algorithm to understand which is the part of the data that is bad and how it's possible to fix it.
Right.
And then have the possibility to have a very good data to train the system properly. And this part of the play is exactly where, let me say, a deep understanding about the technology comes to the stage. Right. So you need to have a knowledge that make possible that you can recognize the outliers inside of your data and say, this data has to be fixed before the training, otherwise you cannot do it. And we have applied a specific artificial intelligence algorithm to fix it, not by the humans, by the artificial intelligence itself. And this is a game changer here. Because again, you do not need to be a data scientist. You do not be an expert of Python or people like that. You only need to bring to the system your knowledge about your current information you have in your mind, nothing else.
These are people that, and this is the point, right? Around this you're not burdening IT with this. You're burdening the people who deal with this every single day, and this is going to benefit them anyway. So you're leveraging the knowledge that they have of that data in general because they use it on an everyday basis, but you're also doing it and leveraging their time because in effect, you're making their job more efficient in the first place, right? So you get a double benefit in that respect.
Exactly. And by the way, the other aspect of this story is that those people will be also the people that, as you mentioned, will benefit, but also will train the future. Yeah. So the artificial intelligence has to be maintained updated. And who is the best updater, let me say that way, of the artificial intelligence model? The people that use it.
Yeah.
Because every time they make a choice, every time they select something, behind the artificial intelligence model has to have the capability, and our system has the capability, to update the model automatically. Yep. It's what we call crowd learning. So we learn from the crowd of the users, even if they're not aware that they are training every day the system.
But that's where, I mean, probably going a bit off topic, but all of the knowledge that human beings have, going to sound like I'm talking about Terminator now, but the knowledge that that you have as an individual over the years of experience can be used so effectively in conjunction with an engine such as machine learning and AI. But let's talk about the benefits of that then, right? I mean, so you've got the data, you come in, and data is a program, it's not a project, right? It's something that we always say in Tealbook. The first time you run the data through, you come back with a particular level of information. The next time you run it, it gets better, and so on and so forth. But in the end, how is that transitioning into benefits for individuals who utilize these kinds of solutions?
There are four range of benefits. So one range is related to the data quality, and data quality have some specific benefits, for example, in the comprehension of what you have. So specifically improve categorization, make possible to understand better what you have. And so we have seen that 30 to 50% of improvement in the categorization is quite possible, and make possible other activities like, for example, perfect identification of the items to make possible substitutions from original equipment to MRO conversion. So savings at the end of the day. And indeed, we can get a lot of savings. So having better data in this area has drive to even 10% of savings of the spending. And we are not saying pocket money, because MRO for certain industries are 10% of the turnover in the spending.
Right.
So saving the 10% is saving 1% of the global turnover of the company. So it's a huge quantity of money. And other part of the story are the duplicates discovery impact on the reduction of the inventories. So you can redefine, for example, how much inventory you need. Which are the stock levels that are really necessary for you to maintain. And overall, and this is a very common aspect studied by a lot of independent firms like IDC, like Forrester, etc., there is a huge process efficiencies improvements by the people that are using the system. So there is a dramatic reduction of the time to search something, to find it, and so you can repair more efficiently a production line, you can reduce the stop of the line, etc., etc. For some companies, you count in thousands of dollars each minute that a line stops. So it's really make the difference.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of this, we were talking about ERP migration earlier, and those programs tend to go on for, a good couple of years or longer, depending on how big the company is and what their landscape looks like. What is this kind of, how long does it take to implement, and what kinds of steps do you need to take? And if we can also talk about what the customer would need to do, that may be useful for the audience.
First of all, obviously, this depends on the quantity of data we are dealing with. But to be clear, a project that ranges from 3 to 6 months, depending on the quantity of the data, where 6 months means a global project in all the countries of the world, involving probably a couple of million of material master data. So 3 months means 100,000 master data, or a range like that. So more or less, these are the ranges of the people, the size of the labs, so for having the system implemented. But what we are speaking about is the fact that this activity is completely independent from the IT perspective. So it can be done without any integration with the current systems or with the future system, because it's an area of working where we only need the original data. So an extraction of the original data to be used inside of the system to make the training and to make possible the usage of the system. On the other hand, what we have seen here is that the quantity of people that we required from the client side, because of the things we said before about the training of the artificial intelligence, is quite compressed, and must be in that way, because those people are in the real business every day. So they don't have the time to dedicate to another implementation, etc. So what we have developed when I said before about the outliers in the data, etc., is a way to capture the contribution of those people in only 3 or 4 sessions of half a day, nothing else.
Okay.
And this is quite important in this kind of project where the day-by activity cannot stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not. So reducing that as a claim, you do not need to have IT people on board only for the extraction of the data, nothing else. And you do not need to have a lot of people of your procurement processes or your supply chain dedicated to train the system, because the system itself reducing the contribution of the human being as much as possible.
And just talking about how that happens, right? I mean, you guys, so the AI, if we think about the steps, it's about receiving the data, absorbing that data. The AI then works through that data. And then from that, what it's basically doing is it's learned what it's learned from your data, and then it asks particular pieces of information that would be relevant for the people who are managing the inventory today. And it's done through multiple choice questions. So it's literally done almost like a form.
So, when I said before, you need only to bring your knowledge, is exactly on that point. Okay. So the algorithm identified the outliers that are not possible to understand automatically. And then the system compress this kind of information and have some questions like, this material should be categorized in one of these 5 categories that I'm proposing you as a system. And so you have only to answer to that multiple question. It's quite easy because it's only your knowledge is what is needed to answer that question. Nothing else. So when I said before, you do not need to be a data scientist or prepare something in Python, is exactly in that the contribution of the client side is only related with the things that they already knows. And they know, and that's the magic contribution, because most of the time, this kind of problems in the data are related with the fact that each company has his own jargon.
Yeah.
And this jargon is something that is not public. So you cannot retrieve in any mathematical model, or you cannot retrieve from any public information system. So it's in the mind of the reader, and is in the mind of the reader of that company.
Of course.
And this is the point where the algorithm can support the fact that recognize it automatically, make possible a very value-added contribution from the people, because they are asked to answer something that only they know.
Okay. So Adriano, given that process, and given that what we were talking about earlier about the systems able to learn, understand data from multiple countries, multiple systems, multiple languages, if you then have questions that need to be asked for those specific countries or languages, does the system provide those questions back in those languages to those specific countries as well?
Yes. And this is quite necessary, because the people involved in this kind of knowledge most of the time are local people.
Yeah.
Sure. So not necessarily they are English-speaking people. Yeah,
yeah, so, of course. And that's kind of why I was asking the question. It's just, that's super clever, because it's not only understanding everything that it's got to do from a technical perspective, all the jargon, etc., that you were talking about, but then it's got to go, okay, well, this one was this set of data was from China, this set of data was from Italy, this set of data was from Malaysia, right? And it's got to be able to go back and ask those questions in those languages, because otherwise, to your point, they wouldn't understand them very well. So that's really interesting. You know, if you're able to, can you talk about, you know, the maturity of the solution, the kinds of companies that you've implemented this for? Because that could be very interesting.
The solution is indeed very mature. We are speaking about the TAM 4, so the 4 release of this solution. We have a dozen of clients in production. To mention one of them, AB InBev, as I mentioned before, but also Airbus, military, defense and military, Enel, Shell, Galp, Perenco, Danone, etc. So many large multinational companies, but also other companies that are not so well known, but they have the same kind of complexity, because in this world, you have what is called a mini multinational, something like that. So companies that are around 1 billion of turnover,
right.
But they have a lot of production sites around the world with the same kind of complexity. So it's a complexity that is quite common in this globalized world. And I think that even despite COVID situation, this globalized world will remain here. So you cannot change the model from tomorrow because the COVID. So will remain the problems related with the fact that you have plants in China, you have plants in Africa, you have plants in South America, and you have to deal with this complexity.
So in SAP's work, I mean, this is an important point for anybody, you know, who is an SAP customer today, because whether you're classed as a mid-market customer, it's why I asked the question, right? Companies below 1 billion in SAP are kind of small, medium businesses, or the upper mid-market. So it's good to know that this would certainly help them as well, because a lot of them, to your point, have this challenge. I'm quite passionate about the mid-market. Anybody who knows me or knows my background or has seen some of the things on the channel before, you know, the mid-market has its own set of challenges. They don't have as much support typically from IT and certainly from a budgetary standpoint. Yet they still have to operate as efficiently as possible. So it's good to know that it works on that. Now, another aspect that naturally this lends itself into is sustainability, right? So, and we've talked about this in relation to, you know, Tealbook and Creactives and how our data sets and our process, which is broadly very, very similar. We just focus on vendor data, but you guys focus on material master, but there is some synergy, which we'll talk about on another video at some point. But ESG is naturally a really big thing. So, you know, where have you seen that impact? You know, and how is that affecting your conversations with your customers, etc. as well?
Well, it's a trend topic and will remain a trend topic because for the money that is involved. So the green certificates are there, so you have to spend money. So optimize your carbon footprint is a leverage to reduce the cost of the inefficiencies. So it's all about having the right information. So we think that for a specific part of the story, that is the scope 3 of the ESG, you need to have a very flexible way to collect the information to make possible to understand what is your carbon footprint around your supply chain.
Right.
And the right place to do is obviously where you have the data of the materials you buy. So it's quite normal to think that if you have a system that governs the evolution and the maintenance of your material master data, one of the information that must be stored there is the carbon footprint of each material.
Yeah.
This is the only way that combining this information with rotation, quantities you buy per year, et cetera, you can have a clear understanding, not a clear, a precise understanding about your carbon footprint, and then see where you can take action.
And that's the benefits, right? Yeah, and that's exactly it. I think it's having that information at attribute level, being able to then roll that up and understand the impact of CO2 on a particular material that you build, and then looking at ways, being able to report on that, and then look at working with your suppliers to reduce that at a attribute level, to reduce the overall CO2 emissions. That's something that we've been talking. We talked about this in our recent call as well, actually. But that is something that you've built in natively into the solution as well as a benefit, right?
Yeah, and the possibility is the supplier of you can upload some information, and then you can use this information, or you can collect this information for example, for basic materials from public sources that there are. So it's a repository of the information, but it's also the possibility to make computation using this information.
Brilliant. No, that's great. And thank you for that, Adriano. It's been a really good overview. You know, like I said at the beginning, I love the way that you guys have done that. I love the idea of how data is now being used in procurement to benefit how procurement work and to really help drive everything forward. And Creactives is definitely, you know, you guys are doing some really, really interesting stuff. So I can't wait to do, you know, the next videos with you, because we're going to talk a little bit about how poor data impacts a source to pay implementation. So how what we've talked about today is, you know, impacts source to pay. And we'll talk a little bit more about the synergy with Tealbook at that point. But yeah, look, again, thank you for the time. I will put links below to the Creactives website. There's been a couple of webinars and some white papers that you guys have done recently. We'll connect to that, as well as Adriano's details. If you've liked this video, do like, share, and subscribe. You know, I'm only a small channel, but we're trying to get this information out there. And for guests like Adriano, who are really helping me, thank you again. But we'll be back. We'll be back really soon. And
thank you to you for the opportunity. I'm very happy. I'm very excited to collaborate with Tealbook. I see that a lot of synergy here, and we can really provide to our customers a big value in this transformation path.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Adriano. We'll catch up really soon. And thanks for watching, everybody. And see you.
Thanks for watching. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.